I was standing near the stage in a hotel ballroom in Austin, holding a microphone I hadn't planned on using. Nearly 200 people from the class of 2008 were gathered in front of me. Name tags, half-finished drinks, polite laughter bouncing off crystal chandeliers. A slideshow of old football games and prom photos played behind the DJ booth. Kate stood a few feet away, next to Lucas. My wife had brought her ex to her reunion, and I was no longer going to stay quiet. It wasn't the fact that he was there. High school reunions are built on ghosts. Old crushes. Almosts. What ifs. I understood that. It was the way she stood with him, her body angled toward his, her hand resting lightly on his arm like it had been there yesterday, instead of 15 years ago. She laughed at something he said, head tilted back, the same laugh she used to give me when we were still dating, and everything felt new. I'd been watching for 20 minutes. People were watching too. A couple of guys from her old friend group glanced at me, then at them, then quickly away. There's a particular kind of silence that spreads in a room when something uncomfortable is happening in plain sight. I felt it settle over the ballroom like dust. Lucas leaned closer to her. She didn't move away. That's when I realized something simple and cold. This wasn't nostalgia. This was unfinished business. And I wasn't going to pretend I didn't see it anymore. Before that night in Austin, our life looked stable from the outside. I'm a financial consultant. Numbers, projections, risk management. I spend my days studying patterns and advising clients on what could go wrong long before it does. Kate is a marketing director for a regional tech firm. Smart, articulate, organized. The kind of woman who could command a boardroom and still remember to schedule the kids' dentist appointments. We had 2 kids. A mortgage in a quiet subdivision north of the city. 2 vacations a year, 1 beach, 1 mountains. Predictable. Structured. Responsible. That was the word I used for us. Responsible. Our schedules ran like clockwork. I handled long-term investments and school planning. She managed social calendars and brand campaigns. We didn't fight much. When we did, it was about logistics. Who forgot to pick up groceries? Who overbooked a weekend? Nothing dramatic. If there were cracks, they were hairline. Easy to ignore. Kate started preparing for her 15-year reunion almost 6 months ahead of time. It began subtly, mentioning the event over dinner, scrolling through old photos on her phone. "Can you believe it's been 15 years?" she'd say, half smiling. Then came the gym membership upgrade. Evening yoga classes twice a week. A new trainer. She said she just wanted to feel confident seeing everyone again. I didn't question that. She bought a dress 3 months early. Navy blue. Fitted, but not loud. She tried it on in our bedroom and asked what I thought. "You look great," I said, and I meant it. She stood in front of the mirror longer than necessary, smoothing the fabric over her waist, adjusting the straps. "I wonder who'll show up," she murmured. That's when Lucas's name came back into rotation. "My first boyfriend," she said casually one night while folding laundry. "We dated junior year. Nothing serious. Just kids." The way she said "nothing serious" carried a softness that didn't match the words. I asked what he was doing now. "Not sure," she replied too quickly. "I think he moved back to Austin. Someone mentioned that in the alumni group." After that, his name appeared more often than coincidence would justify. Lucas was always good at math. Lucas hated school dances. Lucas's mom used to make the best cookies. Small, harmless memories. Delivered with a tone that hovered somewhere between amusement and preservation. A few weeks before the reunion, I noticed she'd changed the password on her phone. Not a dramatic moment. Just a quiet shift. I saw her typing something new one night when she thought I was asleep. I didn't ask. Late at night, she'd lie on her side of the bed, screen lighting her face. A soft smile would appear, gone the moment I shifted. "Work?" I'd ask. "Yeah, just catching up." I accepted that. Because stable marriages aren't supposed to unravel loudly. They loosen thread by thread. And at the time, I still believed we were just busy. Just tired. Just adults managing responsibilities. I didn't question the warmth in her voice when she said his name. Not yet. At the reunion, I understood within 10 seconds that this wasn't casual. We had barely stepped into the ballroom when Kate spotted him across the room. I felt her body shift before I saw his face. A small inhale. A straightening of her posture. The kind of alertness that doesn't belong to polite nostalgia. "Lucas," she said softly, almost to herself. He was standing near the bar, taller than I expected. Clean cut. confident in that relaxed way men get when they've aged well. When he saw her, his entire expression changed. Not surprised. Certain. They closed the distance quickly. Too quickly. Like they'd rehearsed the path. There are greetings between old classmates. Brief hugs, laughter, exaggerated disbelief at how much time has passed. This wasn't that. They held each other half a second longer than appropriate. His hands settled low on her back before sliding away. When they pulled apart, they didn't step back fully. They stayed within each other's space. Kate turned to me, eyes bright. Evan, this is Lucas. There was pride in her voice. Not embarrassment. Not awkwardness. Pride. Lucas extended his hand. Firm grip. Measured smile. I've heard about you, he said. That caught my attention. Oh. I replied evenly. Yeah. Kate mentioned you're in finance. Sounds impressive. Kate's laugh came quickly. I didn't say impressive. But she didn't deny mentioning me either. I nodded, filed it away. We stood in a small circle, the three of us, but I might as well have been background furniture. Their conversation moved fast. Inside jokes from sophomore year, references to teachers I didn't know, names that meant nothing to me. What mattered wasn't the words. It was the energy. She touched his arm when she laughed. Light, automatic. He leaned down when she spoke, like he'd done it 1,000 times before. There was no stiffness. No searching for common ground. It was already there. At one point I asked, did you two stay in touch over the years? Kate answered too quickly. Not really. Lucas smiled. Here and there. That contradiction didn't go unnoticed. Later, while Kate was across the room greeting another friend, I found myself standing near the bar beside Lucas. You come alone? I asked casually. He didn't hesitate. Yeah. Figured I'd keep it simple. There was something deliberate in that choice. When Kate returned, she already knew the answer. You didn't bring anyone? She asked him, voice softening. He shook his head. No. You? She glanced at me briefly. I brought my husband. It was a joke on the surface, but it didn't land like one. As the night unfolded, small details began aligning in my mind. The late-night messages, the new phone password, the renewed gym focus, the softness when she said his name. None of it felt random anymore. At one point, I watched her check her phone. A message came in. She angled the screen away from me instinctively. Lucas's phone buzzed seconds later. He glanced down, smiled faintly. I didn't need to see the content. The timing was enough. I didn't confront her. I didn't interrupt. But something inside me shifted permanently. I stopped being the husband enjoying a reunion and became the man observing a pattern. I didn't believe in coincidence anymore. The second time they disappeared to check out the terrace, I didn't follow. The first time, I told myself it was harmless. The ballroom was loud. Music bleeding into conversations. People moving in clusters. It made sense to step outside for air. If you've made it this far, this story clearly caught your attention. If you're enjoying it, drop a like on the video. It helps me see what kind of stories you want more of next. Let's keep going. But the second time, I watched the pattern. Lucas leaned toward her. She nodded before he finished speaking. They slipped through the side doors together, her hand briefly brushing his lower back as they passed through. I stayed where I was. I picked up my drink and moved closer to a column near the stage, where I had a clear view of the terrace doors without being obvious. Years in finance train you to sit with discomfort, to watch markets dip without reacting emotionally, to wait. Something inside me grew quiet, not angry, clear. For months, I had been adjusting to small inconsistencies. Late-night texts, that guarded smile at her phone, the password change she never mentioned, the gym sessions that ran long, the casual reintroduction of Lucas into everyday conversation. Every detail by itself was defensible. Together, they formed a line. On the terrace, their silhouettes were visible through the glass panels. They stood closer than necessary, not touching at first, just angled toward each other like magnets testing distance. Then she laughed at something he said and placed her hand flat against his chest. Not playful, familiar. He didn't flinch. He covered her hand with his own. It wasn't dramatic. No kissing, no spectacle. But intimacy doesn't require fireworks. It requires comfort. And they had it. I felt the initial surge of something sharp in my chest. The instinct to walk out there. To interrupt. To claim space that technically still belonged to me. Instead, I exhaled slowly. If she brought him here, this wasn't random. You don't invite temptation into a public room unless you've already justified it privately. I stopped trying to be the understanding husband in that moment. Stopped rehearsing lines about trust and communication. If I confronted her in the hallway, she'd minimize it. Say I was reading too much into body language. Accuse me of insecurity. The narrative would shift to my reaction instead of her behavior. I wasn't going to give her that advantage. So I waited. They returned after 10 minutes. Not flustered. Not hurried. Calm. Controlled. Lucas carried 2 fresh drinks. Kate's lipstick was slightly smudged at the edge. Just enough that she adjusted it quickly using her phone camera before rejoining the crowd. She saw me watching. For a split second, her expression changed. Not guilt. Assessment. She walked toward me with a practiced smile. "Everything okay?" she asked. "Yeah," I replied evenly. "Just taking it all in." She searched my face for signs of tension. I gave her none. That unsettled her more than anger would have. For the rest of the evening, I shifted from participant to observer. I noted how often they found each other in the room. How conversations drifted back to shared memories. How he stood slightly behind her, hand hovering near her waist, but rarely fully touching when others were close. Careful. That's what it was. Careful. And that's when I made a decision. I wouldn't confront her tonight. I wouldn't argue in the parking lot. I would wait for the right moment. Because truth, delivered calmly, lands harder than any public accusation shouted in a hallway. And I had a feeling that moment was coming. I just needed to recognize it when it did. Once I stopped reacting internally, I started seeing everything. It's strange how clarity works. The moment emotion steps back, detail steps forward. Kate and Lucas weren't reckless. They were measured. But even measured people forget they're being watched when they feel safe. I stood near the edge of the ballroom, nursing the same drink long after the ice had melted, and let the room unfold. She touched his arm every time she laughed. Not accidental contact. Not brushing past him in a crowded space. Her fingers lingered just long enough to communicate something wordless. Ownership. Familiarity. Permission. Lucas responded in kind. His hand found the small of her back more than once, resting there in that subtle, guiding way men use when they already know the shape of someone's body. They didn't cling to each other. They didn't need to. People began whispering. I could hear fragments behind me. Weren't they inseparable senior year? I thought they were going to get married back then. Some things never change. That last one lingered in my ears longer than it should have. I shifted slightly, pretending to study the slideshow playing on the wall. A picture flashed from prom night. Kate in a silver dress, Lucas beside her, both 17 and smiling like the future belonged to them. The DJ announced that later in the evening there would be an open mic session. Anyone who wanted to share memories could step up and speak. I watched Kate glance toward the stage when that was said. She and Lucas exchanged a look. It was small, almost imperceptible, but it was shared. That's when I noticed something else. Kate wasn't surprised by anything Lucas said that night. Not his career updates. Not his move back to Austin. Not the fact that he came alone. She already knew. Earlier in the week, she had told me, "I'm not even sure who's showing up." Now I understood that wasn't true. At one point I saw her check her phone again. She angled the screen toward Lucas discreetly. He nodded slightly. Coordination. This wasn't spontaneous nostalgia colliding in a ballroom. This had been arranged. A memory surfaced in my mind, 3 months earlier, when she'd asked casually, "Do you think it's weird if exes catch up before reunions? Just to avoid awkwardness?" I'd shrugged at the time. Now the context had weight. They disappeared to the terrace once more, though this time only for a few minutes. When they came back, Kate's composure was different, more settled, like a decision had been reinforced. I heard someone behind me say, "You'd think her husband would say something." I didn't turn around, because I wasn't embarrassed. I was calculating. The open mic sign-up sheet was being passed around near the DJ booth. A handful of names were scribbled down. Class president, former quarterback, a girl who had moved to New York. Kate's name wasn't on the list. Neither was Lucas's. But they were standing close to the table when it circulated. That's when I understood something important. They weren't just reliving the past. They were testing the present. Testing how far they could lean into something unfinished while I stood a few feet away pretending not to see it. The whispers grew louder as the night went on. Not cruel. Curious. People remember high school narratives. They root for old stories to revive. And standing there, watching my wife light up in ways she hadn't in years, I realized this wasn't just about attraction. It was about identity. Around Lucas, She wasn't a marketing director with 2 kids and a mortgage. She was 17 again, unburdened. And when the DJ tapped the microphone to test the sound, the feedback hum cut through the room like a signal. That's when it clicked for me. The open mic wasn't a risk. It was an opportunity, and I knew exactly where this would end. When I stepped toward the stage, it didn't feel impulsive. It felt scheduled. The DJ had just finished introducing the third speaker, a former class president who joked about pep rallies and algebra exams. Laughter rolled through the room, easy and nostalgic. I moved before I could overthink it. Not fast, not dramatic, just steady. The microphone sat in its stand at center stage, chrome catching the ballroom lights. I could feel eyes shift as I approached, not because anyone knew what I was about to say, but because I wasn't on the list. Kate noticed halfway through my walk. Her smile faltered. Lucas followed her gaze and stiffened slightly. I took the microphone out of its stand and adjusted it calmly. My wife brought her ex to our reunion, I said evenly. I didn't stay quiet. The room went still. Not confused. Alert. You can measure silence. It has weight when it settles over 200 people at once. I felt it press into the carpet beneath my shoes. I didn't raise my voice. I'm not a member of the class of 2008. I continued. I'm just the husband. The guy who drove up from Dallas, booked the hotel, and figured this was a night about reconnecting with old friends. A few uncomfortable shifts in chairs. I kept my tone level. But sometimes reconnecting isn't about friendship. Sometimes it's about revisiting something that never really ended. I saw Kate take a step forward. Lucas placed a subtle hand near her elbow, as if grounding her. I didn't look at them directly. I've spent most of tonight watching patterns, I said. And I work in finance, so I'm trained to recognize when numbers stop adding up. A nervous chuckle from somewhere in the crowd. It died quickly. I don't think anyone here is shocked to see old couples reconnect. That's human. But there's a difference between remembering who you were and pretending the life you built since then doesn't exist. Kate's face had gone pale. Lucas stood very still. I'm not here to embarrass anyone, I added. I'm here because I realized something simple tonight. Silence can look like acceptance, and I don't accept what I've been watching. A woman near the front glanced between Kate and Lucas, then back at me. I'm sure everyone here has stories about high school love, I said. About who you thought you'd end up with. But those stories are supposed to stay in the yearbooks, not follow you home. The microphone felt lighter in my hand the longer I held it. My wife didn't come here to reconnect with friends, I said calmly. She came to reconnect with something else. No shouting, no insults, just clarity. And I won't stand a few feet away pretending I don't see it. The silence deepened, not hostile, just heavy with recognition. I set the microphone back into its stand carefully. No dramatic exit, no glare. I stepped down from the stage and walked toward the ballroom doors. Behind me, no one applauded. No one laughed. Because this wasn't a performance. It was a line being drawn in public. And once a line is visible, you can't pretend it was never there. I didn't rush. I walked through the ballroom doors and into the hotel lobby like I had nowhere urgent to be. The carpet muffled everything behind me. Voices, movement, whatever reaction was unfolding in that room. The lobby lighting was softer, warmer. It smelled faintly of polished wood and citrus cleaner. I stood near the front windows, looking out at the parking lot. 30 seconds later, I heard her heels. Quick, uneven. Evan, she said sharply. I turned slowly. Kate's face was flushed, not with embarrassment, but with anger barely contained. Lucas had not followed her. That told me enough. What was that? She demanded. I didn't interrupt her. You humiliated me, she said, voice tightening. In front of everyone. I let her finish. It was a reunion, she continued. People were joking around, catching up. And you decide to make some speech like I committed a crime. Her words came fast now. Practiced defenses forming in real time. It meant nothing, she said. You completely misread the situation. I watched her carefully. For years, whenever conflict surfaced, I had leaned in first. Tried to fix tone, soften edges, absorb tension so the conversation didn't fracture. Tonight, I didn't move toward her. You're overreacting, she said. Lucas and I dated when we were kids. That's it. You turned something harmless into a spectacle. I nodded once. Okay, I replied calmly. That caught her off guard. She expected pushback, emotion, a debate she could redirect. Instead, I gave her space. You don't get to embarrass me because you're insecure, she added. There it was. Insecure. A convenient label. I met her eyes. You made your choice before tonight, I said evenly. She blinked. What does that even mean? It means you didn't decide to reconnect tonight. That started months ago. Her mouth opened slightly, then closed. You're imagining things, she said, but her voice lacked conviction. I'm not, I replied. I've been watching patterns. Not just tonight. She crossed her arms. Defensive posture. Containment. So what now, she asked. You walk out? That's your solution? For the first time in years, I said, I'm not trying to save the conversation. Silence stretched between us. The lobby doors slid open automatically behind me as a couple entered, laughing, unaware of the fracture happening a few feet away. Kate's tone softened suddenly. You're blowing this up, she said quietly. Over nothing. I studied her face. The woman I built a home with. The mother of my children. The person who used to look at me the way she looked at Lucas tonight. This didn't start in the ballroom, I said. She swallowed. You could have talked to me privately, she said. I've been silent privately for months. That landed. She searched my expression for anger, but there wasn't any. Just certainty. You don't get to rewrite this, I added. Her voice cracked slightly now. So that's it, she asked. I didn't raise my voice. I'm done pretending. And with that, I stepped past her and out through the lobby doors into the Austin night. She didn't follow me this time. Because for the first time, she understood I wasn't chasing her explanation. I was walking away from it. I didn't go back into the ballroom. I walked straight to the parking garage, got into my truck, and sat there with the engine off for a full minute before starting it. My hands weren't shaking. My chest wasn't tight. It felt like something had already settled. By the time I pulled onto the highway, my phone was vibrating nonstop. Texts from unknown numbers. A few from people I vaguely recognized as Kate's old classmates. Are you okay? That was intense. Man, bold move. I didn't respond. An hour later, Kate finally called. I let it ring. When I got back to the hotel room, I packed my bag quietly. I didn't slam drawers. I didn't rehearse speeches. I simply folded my clothes, placed my toiletries in my case, and booked an earlier flight home for the next morning. She returned close to midnight. Her makeup was gone. So was the composure. You left, she said, like it surprised her. Yes. She stood near the door for a second, uncertain. People are posting about it, she said. I nodded once. That tends to happen. Someone recorded you, she added. It's already on Instagram. I sat on the edge of the bed and met her eyes. I didn't push the story, I said calmly. It happened on its own. She ran a hand through her hair. You've made this public, she said. You brought it public, I replied. I just acknowledged it. That ended the conversation. By morning, the video had spread further. Not viral in a national sense, but within her professional circle, within alumni networks, within our shared community. It turned out Lucas wasn't as unattached as he'd implied. By the second day, someone had tagged a woman in the comments, his partner. She saw the clip, saw the way he stood behind Kate, the way I spoke. The implication didn't require exaggeration. I never contacted her. I didn't need to. Consequences travel faster than explanations. When we got home, the silence between us wasn't explosive. It was administrative. 3 days later, I requested access to our phone records. Not to create drama, just to verify what I already suspected. Months of late-night exchanges. Consistent patterns. Messages timed with work calls. When I confronted her with that data, she didn't argue. She shifted. From denial to justification. It wasn't physical, she said at first. Then, later, it was just emotional. Eventually, I don't know what I was thinking. The truth surfaced gradually, not because I forced it, but because it had nowhere left to hide. During the divorce proceedings, those messages became part of the file. I didn't circulate them. I didn't leak them. I let documentation do what documentation does. Lucas's situation unraveled in parallel. His partner left within weeks. That information reached me through mutual acquaintances, not gossip I sought. Kate accused me once, just once, of orchestrating everything. You wanted this outcome, she said. No, I answered. I wanted honesty. The outcome followed. I never chased interviews. Never responded to the posts that continued circulating in smaller waves online. The video lived for a few weeks. Then something else captured people's attention. Public memory is short. Private consequences are not. By the time mediation began, there was no fight left in the room. Just paperwork. and the quiet recognition that something had ended long before I ever picked up that microphone. The divorce wasn't explosive. It was procedural. That surprised people more than the reunion did. There were no screaming matches in the driveway, no dramatic social media posts, no friends picking sides in public. What remained between Kate and me was quieter than that. It was fatigue. When mediation started, we sat across from each other in a neutral conference room with a long table and bad coffee. 2 attorneys, a stack of documents, custody schedules printed in clean columns. I didn't look at her the way I used to, not with resentment, just recognition. The woman across from me wasn't the one I married. Or maybe she was, and I'd just been slow to see it. Finances were straightforward. I had already separated accounts once the phone records confirmed what I suspected. Nothing aggressive, just responsible. She didn't contest much. The messages between her and Lucas had been preserved. Months of emotional intimacy. Plans to meet, someday, without logistics. Conversations that blurred lines well before Austin. Her attorney attempted to frame it as midlife confusion. Harmless nostalgia misinterpreted. But documentation doesn't respond to tone. It responds to timestamps. We agreed on shared custody. The kids didn't need spectacle. They needed stability. I stayed in the house. She moved into a townhome 15 minutes away. There was one moment, toward the end of mediation, when she looked at me and said quietly, "You didn't have to do it that way." She meant the stage. I held her gaze. "You didn't have to bring him," I replied. That was the closest we came to revisiting it. I didn't celebrate when the final decree was signed. There was no victory in it, just confirmation. People assume public moments like that microphone speech come from anger, that they're driven by ego or revenge. But the truth is simpler. By the time I walked onto that stage, the marriage had already ended privately. The speech didn't break it. It acknowledged it. Over the following months, life reorganized itself. The house felt different at first. Quieter. Not empty, just rebalanced. I adjusted routines. School drop-offs on alternating weeks. Grocery lists cut in half. I stopped checking her social media. Stopped asking mutual friends for updates. Lucas faded from relevance. Whether they pursued something afterward didn't matter to me anymore. Whatever existed between them had already cost enough. A few people reached out, curious about that night. I kept my responses brief. It wasn't about drama, I'd say. It was about clarity. Clarity isn't loud. It's precise. When I look back now, I don't see a ballroom or a microphone. I see months of small decisions, ignored instincts, postponed conversations, rationalized discomfort. The stage was just the first time I stopped postponing. I didn't seek revenge. I didn't destroy anything that wasn't already cracking. I simply stepped out of a marriage that had quietly dissolved. And I stopped being the man who ignored what was right in front of him. Time passed the way it always does, quietly, without asking permission. I moved to a different neighborhood 6 months after the divorce was finalized. Smaller house, fewer rooms, less history in the walls. The kids adjusted faster than I expected. Routines rebuilt themselves around soccer practices, homework at the kitchen island, Sunday pancakes. I see them every day. That part never changed. Sometimes someone mentions that night in Austin. A coworker who saw the clip. A distant acquaintance who remembers the reunion. I don't take pride in it. And I don't regret it. It wasn't about public exposure. It wasn't about proving anything to a room full of strangers. It was about drawing a line I should have drawn months earlier. When she brought her ex to our reunion, she expected me to stay silent. I didn't. And in choosing not to stay silent, I chose something else too. Peace. That's the end of this story. If you made it all the way here, consider subscribing to stay with us. I've placed a couple of recommended videos on screen for you. Pick one and keep watching. I'll see you in the next story.